You are in Unlocking Your Classic Books for a New Generation. And I thank you for joining us. I see so many friends and family in the audience, are some of our deepest partners and our dearest friends, and new faces as well. But thank you so much. We're going to do a little discussion, a moderated discussion. I will be your moderator, and joining us in this discussion are two wonderful, wonderful experimenters. Amy Brand, who is the director of MIT Press. Amy's been the leader there for about 2 years, and she has just been doing so many interesting experiments since she got there. I think it's because of her background in cognitive sciences. She has a PhD from MIT, and she brings with her just a deep inquiry about how to use technologies and communications and publications. Sitting next to her is my boss, Brewster Kahle. He is the founder and digital librarian of the Internet Archive, one of the largest digital libraries in the world. I'm wondering, how many of you have ever used archive.org? How many of you have used the Wayback Machine? Excellent. And Open Library? We partner with over 1,000 libraries, either in our web archiving work or our book digitization work. How many of you represent partners of ours or vendors? Not as many. Well, we want more hands to be raised before the day is done. But those of you who have heard Brewster, who just came from his talk, realize that for decades now, he has been dreaming and working and putting every bit of his passion and energy and intelligence into building the Library of Alexandria for this next generation. So the two of them have combined on a new project, and that's what we want to talk to you about. So here's the game plan for the next 45 minutes. We're going to kind of describe for you this new partnership between MIT Press and the Internet Archive, how it came to be, the parameters of it, how it's working. We're going to show you a live demo of what we've done in the last couple of months, and then we're going to leave a lot of time for questions so that you can try this on for size, understand whether this could work for you. Do we have some university press directors and staff? Anyone work for a university press? A couple. Good. Well, how about publishers in general? Excellent. Well, this could work for any number of stakeholders. Then we will take your questions. So if that sounds like a good game plan for you, let's get started. What MIT Press and the Internet Archive is doing is, in essence, this. We've come to an agreement and we believe this is the first kind of agreement that we know of between a university press and a digital library to go into MIT Press's backlist, their classic books, their deep backlist, digitize those, give those files back to Amy and MIT Press, and also make them available on archive.org for a one-to-one lending schema. These folks are going to tell you more about this. It's an experiment. But it's an experiment we hope will grow and that we have funding to grow. So let's dig in. Amy, I think the question on many people's minds is why? Why would you choose to do this? Why wouldn't you just sell these books as ebooks?
Well, some of them we actually will sell as ebooks. So it's a little complicated, so you'll have to bear with me. And I was thinking when Brewster was talking earlier and he said, yeah, we're doing all of MIT Press's backlist, I started thinking about the fact that, well, actually, we're launching our own digital platform and selling our ebooks to institutions. And so, we have to have some capacity to understand how we're making these decisions about what goes into the Internet Archive, what might not. But basically, this goes back to, in the early days of my becoming director of the MIT Press, and I was thinking about, what I really wanted to accomplish as a press director, and I was struck by the fact that so much of what we had published over the 55 years that we had been in existence had never been digitized. There might have been an unauthorized copy here or there floating around, but just literally, hundreds of books that were no longer available, and I feel like one of the things that I want to accomplish, one of my legacies, should be making available in digital form, everything that I have the rights to make available. Some of that stuff's going to be sellable, some of it is not going to be. But we are a mission-driven publisher, and for the most part, you're talking about content that, for many years it has not been monetized. It's been out of print, it's been out of circulation. And so I had reached out to Brewster because he used to be back in the mid-90s, early 90s, on the MIT Press management board, and I've been completely reshuffling our management board to bring in people that can really support my strategic vision and argue with me the way I need to be argued with as I think through these things. And I thought of Brewster, and I reached out and I said, would you consider coming back on the MIT Press board? And he said, yeah, I don't do that kind of thing anymore, but how can I help you? And I talked to him about my vision around digitizing all of these hundreds, thousands of backlist books, and he said, I think we can work together on this. And then I thought, wow, this could actually end up because we had done some work, fairly rough estimates of what it would cost us, definitely tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's a real win-win. So on the one hand, it's a cost savings for us to get back these files. They're not necessarily the same kinds of files that we would have created if we were going to, sell the books online. But they were good enough in most cases. And so what we started doing is, going through the list and giving our editors a chance to, which was a really valuable exercise anyway, pick out titles that they want to reconsider for bringing back into print that we might add to our own digital collections, and identifying as a way to start, because we're doing this iteratively, works that would not otherwise be available at all. So,
well, Amy, I'm going to stop you there, and I want to hear from Brewster. Brewster, you get this call from Amy, and she says, will you be on my board? And you say, no, not really, but I've got this other proposition for you. Why? What drives you?
MIT Press, as well as a lot of these wonderful presses, have got huge backlists that aren't very available. They may be available in some libraries, but they're not in online resources. They're not linkable from Google. They're not part of our world anymore. And the opportunity to work with MIT, my old alma mater, was fantastic. Just wanted to kind of get something done. I've been, been on a lot of advisory boards, and there's a lot of talk. So I said, okay, Amy, how about let's do something here? And we tried to find a way that was a path through, because she said, I've just invested an awful lot of money in this whole platform, and we're trying to sell all of our backlist as a bulk to these, to many of the same people that you're talking about. How is that path going to work? And at least I tried to be calming, and based on our experience, that even if things are available in two different ways, it often doesn't tend to conflict with each other commercially. That if I were a library and I wanted all of MIT's backlist for all of our students, all for as many uses as I wanted to, that would be great. If I could get the books that were on my shelves digital and lent one-to-one, that's kind of lame, but at least it's there. So if we offered both of those, I'm hoping that it actually reinforces what MIT Press is doing, funding their digitization for bunch of what it is they're trying to do, and then offer it back out as an experiment and go and look at it as okay, did it work or not work? And MIT's always been up for that kind of thing. And Amy particularly has said, sure, let's try this thing, and worked it through her board, which wasn't the easiest thing to do, it seemed, by the time it took anyway, but it worked. And now we've got a lot of books that have already been scanned and are somewhat available.
Brewster, books like one special to you.
Oh, yes. Okay. This book. I've been hearing rumors of this book. It's called Libraries of the Future. And it is by J. Licklider, who's completely famous. It was participated in by Edward Land, by Marvin Minsky, by all of these fabulous, great people. It was published in 1965. And I'd been a librarian, digital librarian title, but I didn't get a hold of this book until 2 years ago. It is like, why didn't I get this to read when I started out in this field? And well, it's because it wasn't available. It really wasn't. I was able to, when I finally got a footnote to this, I was like, okay, that's the one that it was. And I asked Deanna Markham, who ran Clear at the time, that this was done. Yes, that exists. And I found it in a used through, I think, Amazon. It was withdrawn from some library. And it turns out to be completely great. Oh, a little story about this. So we scanned it. After asking. Okay, so there's so I innocently, this was a couple years ago before Amy had called this time around, and I said, can I scan this and put this online? And I just thought I was kind of writing in as some sort of innocuous person. And they said, oh, hi, Brewster. So I guess I was recognized. And they said, just a moment, we'll find out. We'll get back to you tomorrow. Next day, they said, can you give us a couple more days? And what I interpret is they were trying to find out, do we have anything on rights issues? And they're trying to look things up. And I don't know really what happened. But it was like this delay came, and I said at the end of the last, after a week it said, okay, I'll tell you what. Will you guys get upset if we scan this and put this online? And they said no, they wouldn't. But I said, okay, I'll do it on my own risk. And if somebody, gripes about it, we'll take it down. And that's, how basically the world works. And so this went up, and I think it's the lead.
That is 3,200 views right now. So
Is that it?
yeah.
So it's been up now. It's gotten 3,200 views. So this book actually is actually really pretty great. They got a lot of it right. One thing they got completely wrong, 1965, is when we scanned this, I searched for the term copyright. It appeared once, and it was on the copyright page. Boy, did they not know the issues that we were going to run into. But that was because it was written in 1965. It was before the 1976 Copyright Act, which trashed our whole field. The whole field went completely kaplunk in 1976 when everything became copyrighted and forever. So anyway, it was an interesting book for me, that it was an important one from MIT Press. And now not only is it available to me because I was able to buy it, it's now available online. And you can join the wait list to go and borrow it. It's cool that there's a wait list for this particular book.
So let's walk through this step by step. You came to kind of a conceptual agreement, and then you had to hammer out a contract, an MOU, and that took some time, but you came to an agreement of how this would work. Next, Amy, you had to, with your staff, go into your deep backlist and decide in that rich tapestry of books that you have, which would be the right ones for this program. Mm-hmm. Talk to us about what you decided.
Yeah, I want to say, especially for the other publishers out there, we did spend a lot of time working on the agreement, and I think it could be a useful model for others. And what we arrived at was an agreement that gives me two options. We have a lot of books that we publish open access anyway, and I wanted the option to make books completely openly available through Internet Archive and other platforms, and to have control over those books that were just one-at-a-time lending. So we ended up with this contract that has those two different paths. But what we decided to do was start relatively conservatively, just doing the lending program, and start with books that were out of print. After a legal review, we decided that even though we were informed that we didn't need to do this, that we would feel better if we were to reach out to authors or their estates and let them know what we were doing and give them the opportunity to respond. The vast majority of people we've heard from have been really just overjoyed. I mean, happy that these books are, we're breathing new life into them. There have been a couple of people that were cranky about it and said, absolutely not, or, I want my rights back, or I'm going to do something else with this. But for the most part, people are really, really thrilled. So we started with the out-of-print stuff, we moved on to some books. They're basically, I want to say like pre-95, pre-1990. We are, for now, for this particular project, just looking at books that are not heavily illustrated, because that raises a whole other, range of rights issues, and that we're trying to handle in a different way. My sense is, when I sort of look out into the future, that we're going to get pretty comfortable with this. So as time goes on, we'll probably be less conservative about what we put in the program. But we identified to start 1,500 books that we feel like this is pretty much, pretty low-hanging fruit that we can put in the program. And as I said before, the editors are going through and identifying those books that. So, for example, in the course we had this session before this on artificial intelligence. There's a lot of renewed interest in people like Norbert Wiener, and so in the course of going through this backlist, we realized, wow, we have I think 3 or 4 of Norbert Wiener's original books, and we can do something with that. And in fact, we are republishing 2 of those books. And it was really in the course of doing thinking around this project that we had the opportunity to do that.
So your books, sometimes one of just a couple of copies that you have in your own hands, are then taken to our Boston Public Library scanning center, just a mile away, perhaps, where we scan them, OCR them, put them up here. And then you keep talking about this lending program. Brewster, what does that mean? What does that give us the right to do at Internet Archive?
The idea of the one-to-one lending program started about 6 years ago, pioneered by Boston Public Library, and then there were about 100 librarians, and we got actually unanimous support from the state librarians to do this. The idea is to digitize in copyright, non-rights cleared books that you have physically in your collection, and then make them available in a controlled circulation system, so that there's never more copies floating around than there were in the physical era, but now it's in a hybrid, so it's either it gets lent out digitally or physically. And 6 years ago, we started digitizing the books that are in our collections, so we've done about 500,000 books, and other libraries like the Boston Public Library, they did ones that were important to them. Actually, it was genealogies and cookbooks and I don't know, a bunch of other types of things that were important to them, and different people were doing these, and they added them in, but it was only 1 copy at a time for the whole world, which actually works perfectly fine for the long tail. And the long tail is big. There's a lot of long tail, where 1 copy circulating is probably plenty, but it wasn't good enough to really support a library system, and it was also fairly centralized. So we thought, what if we could do this more broadly and make any library an open library? So anybody that has physical materials could choose, they would have the choice, to go and offer their inventory digitally in combination with their physical. So and they can make up their own rules as to sort of what the restrictions would be. How would this work? And we thought, okay, well, maybe this would make it so that all the academic libraries that had, MIT Press books or other books that have a long shelf life, that they would be able to circulate these things in new and different ways. We knew that based on HotD Trust, that the digitization, perfectly fine. Blind and dyslexic, perfectly fine. Non-consumptive use, perfectly fine. But now this lending thing, is that a fair use? There have been lawyers that have been working that out and coming to general consensus in the United States, probably in Canada, other countries, that this sort of format shifting, if you will, is okay to do. But it's really more comfortable if you can actually get a signature, right? Wouldn't that be great? And go and find, are we actually offending publishers? And that was kind of the experiment with MIT Press and Amy, was to go and figure out, does this, are we fooling ourselves and going and saying this is all working for everybody? And, well, we need some more data, and we'd like to be able to find the data. Like if you're putting this out in competition with, your commercial platform, is it in competition, or does it actually help, or does it help bring books back into print? What is going on out there already outside of our little arcane world of libraries? People have already digitized a lot of books. There was a conversation we had back and forth about library genesis. Would you be up for my saying a little bit about?
Sure, why don't we let Amy talk about that?
Oh, yeah. One of the things that I often point out to other publishers, to, really when I have an opportunity to talk about how I think about the business going forward, the business side of this, is the reality is that almost everything that we publish appears online within a matter of weeks in some unauthorized way. That is just the reality. And so when I think about, our strategy working with Internet Archive, I'm trying to get out in front of, that sort of thing, and the impression in general that, all publishers are bad. It's Robin Hood out there. You just might as well take this stuff and digitize it and put it up because all they want is money. That's actually not true about mission-driven publishers. And I'd like to be able to, through this kind of partnership, make a statement about we are authorizing, these works for much more open distribution. Now, one place where Brewster and I might not agree is when we talk about format switching writ large. I'm not saying that I think it's necessarily okay for every single, hardcover book that we publish to be format switched in every single library. I'm trying to have publishers be a part of the conversation and have some control over that. So yeah.
Let me get this straight. You looked at your many thousands of books in your backlist and identified 1,500 books that you felt comfortable to have Internet Archive digitize. Not beautiful EPUBs, but fine for access, and have allowed Internet Archive to put them up so that one copy at a time can be loaned out. So if someone wants Libraries of the Future, they need to join a wait list. But in the future, as we build out this program called Open Libraries, if MIT Library has it, or Bowling Green Library, or University of Florida, if they own the physical copy and were participating in this, they too would then be able to loan out their digital copies with the publisher's permission.
Right, and that's fine because we've curated this list.
Right. Okay. And in addition to that, we will give you at the end of the day your digital files. So if you wanted to, you could do a print on demand. Mm-hmm. You could sell those in an aggregator or your own platform if you wanted to.
Right. The way that we're thinking about, we are launching our own ebook platform to work directly with institutions, and there's no overlap in what is in those collections and what's in the Internet Archive. That said, we do think, and we have heard from librarians, that they're interested in our open access content, and so there will be cases in which we are adding OA books to those collections as kind of icing on the cake, but they are not part of how we calculate what we're charging for those collections. So I think it's important to understand that. They're pretty, pretty distinct.
And how are we paying for this?
There's a fund, the Arcadia Fund, and we've been in conversation with them over a long period of time as to how do you build digital libraries. And the conversation kind of went, well, we're doing one copy for the world. And they said, that's good, but not great, right? We want a full library system. And I said, well, it looks like we're going to have this deal with MIT Press. Peter, what do you think? Would you be up for funding that? And he said, yeah, great. Let's just fund that. So we now have a handshake idea in common. It hasn't all been screwed down to go and fund the digitization of the MIT Press books at the Boston Public Library, where there's a regional scanning center. So it's staying nearby, and it's watched over by Amy's staff and the Internet Archive staff as the digitization, and with a third-party funder. So we've got the source of materials, the technology and hosting library, Internet Archive, and a funder. And what we'd like to do is say, well, that's working. Hey, Peter, want to do some more? And basically the Arcadia fund has said, yes, let's do more. So there's an opportunity here to take other, at least university presses, maybe even further, as long as it looks like their investment will yield enough return of people learning from these books. So that's the equation that at least we've been finding in this donor mind, and I think probably in many others. So I think we can get the funding for doing at least a whole bunch of university presses, and maybe more and more and more, and even big presses.
Well, let's take a look at what MIT Press and Internet Archive have been able to do in the last few months. Brewster, do you want to show us this
Sure.
collection?
Let me see. Do that scary thing of a live demo. We'll see whether this works. So this is archive.org's website, and it's the MIT Press collection. I'm happy to see there's 479.
Yeah.
You know.
The one thing that's a little bit of a bummer for me is because most of these books are taken out of the MIT libraries where the dust jackets are ripped off. We have such beautiful designs, but most of them are, we've had to use these templates. But
So let's see. There's Libraries of the Future is already checked out. We can join the wait list, or we can let's go for the Fortran coloring book, which looks pretty awesome to me. Say, gosh, this book can be borrowed for 14 days. I have to log in and borrow. Okay, let's see. Do this. I remember my password. Think.
No, I'm stuck remembering.
Okay, so do you want no? So now I can see. Oh, I can see what the metadata is, of course, and the like. But all right, I want to borrow this book. Unfortunately, I don't think my computer is going to allow me to color on it, or if so, the conference people would be very, very upset. Okay, it's checked to see if anybody else has it. No, and there it is in all its glory. Yay!
What other formats could you check this out in?
Let me go back. I can download this as one of those Adobe Digital Editions exploding PDFs, so that I have it for 2 weeks, so I can read it on planes and the like. And that actually works. And then there's the Adobe EPUB. In this case, it would probably look like hash because it works on the OCR output, and this book is handwritten, so it would look kind of messy. But you could check these out. It does work quite well for like straight literature, and that's there are screen readers for those. So for the Adobe Digital Editions EPUB. So if it's kind of a straightforward textual book, then the screen readers for the blind and dyslexic can work, warts and all, but it does. There's also for all of the books that we've scanned, they're available as encrypted DAISY files. And they're encrypted with the same key as the Library of Congress gives out. So if you're blind or dyslexic enough for them, you get a key, and you can download this and put it to one of your little readers. And if you've got privileges like I do, then you can get full text and things. But most people wouldn't get these other formats. MIT Press does get these formats back. Because I'm the librarian, I get kind of administrative access, but if you're just an end user, you wouldn't be able to download these other formats. The works are put into collective VMs for people to be able to do data mining on, and we're just starting to try to figure out how do you go and support a research community in this. Non-trivial, but interested in moving that forward for the AI type uses. I think a lot of the users and readers of this are going to be bots. That it's actually not going to be humans from here on out. In terms of how these materials are going to draw facts out of it, they're going to put them in knowledge bases. They're going to be doing new and interesting and different kinds of things that we haven't really planned for, but we want to encourage.
Can we take a look at who has been using, how many? And bear in mind, folks, that we had an incremental collection building over the last month.
Yes, so we've been putting this up, and it was actually available for all for a while. Wasn't so great, but we did get a lot of borrows right at that time, but there have been 649 borrows just in the last couple months of these of this particular book, and it was digitized on August 7th. So it's usually quite rapidly that things get digitized and then made available. It's an interesting thing to show. If you can go with open access, it gets so much more use than this lending system. I mean, I want to try to unsell lending here. Lending is kind of lame compared to open access. The open access approach is much, much more used by all sorts of different things. This lending is just a piece that we thought we could do. And it's a step in the right direction. It's a place that we can go to from what our lawyers all say. And it passes the smell test. It's kind of what we do. It's been going on for 6 years. But if you're running a university press or you're working with argue more for open access. You'll get 649 views rather than 1 every 2 weeks. Any questions? Yeah. Is that okay?
I'm attacking people, sorry. Don't worry. Hi, I'm Maggie Ansel from the University of Florida, Health Science Center Libraries. So obviously you do more than just books. You're digitizing all of the things. And you mentioned open access and things like that. So obviously a lot of us at different universities are doing our own digitization projects. University of Florida has the Puerto Rico and Florida Newspapers Project that has been funded again, yay! And so how do you play with other library digitization projects? Because while I do love Internet Archive, I love UF digitization, UFDC, and I love MIT stuff, but like searching it all at once, other than Google, is there an option? How do we make these different initiatives more accessible to everyone in a more convenient way, other than, well, you need to search Internet Archive for this one, and then you need UFDC for this one, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I mean, I don't just want to Google everything.
Yeah, no, the discovery layer is really problematic. We've tried federated search, and boy, has that not worked. So there's all sorts of experiments. One option is hosted on us. Wendy, if you scroll up there, go hit on that upload button. If I can suggest you just hit the upload button. Sometime today, tomorrow, next day, just hit upload and just try it. And if you have collections, we would love to host them and organize them into collections and OCR them and put them up. It may not be what you want to do, but try it. Let's see if we can work together on this. If it gets really large, we may have to figure out how to get something funded. But let's just go and try to produce some services that people want to use. So we're another way toward surfacing your materials by hosting it in a different way. We tried with the openlibrary.org website to link to other people's, and that's been really problematic because their links go dead all the time. And so we've tried doing this more distributed system, and it's been hard. So if you'd like to host on the Internet Archive, absolutely. And we have books, music, video, web pages, software. We can process pretty much anything at any scale.
Next question.
Hi, Mark Jacobson from Delta Think. Amy, Brewster, thank you both. It's really exciting what you're doing, and I love that you just decided to do something and not talk about it so much. Brewster, you mentioned that a lot of the users would be bots, and I'm curious if you could talk. Are you doing anything? Are you actively engaged with any text and data mining applications that are kind of crawling that huge trove of knowledge, and how does that get opened up to those kinds of applications and so forth?
There's some we know about and more that we don't. So we worked with the University of Massachusetts. They did, what would you do if you had 1 million ebooks? And so they started working along on that. The reCAPTCHA by Louis von Ahn, the little sort of help us correct books, that started with us. You'd never notice it because he sold it to Google and they erased us from the history. Grumble, grumble. We have the pages in the Wayback Machine that show that they actually started with our collections. So that was one that we didn't even know. We get about 25 million downloads of books every month. 25 million. And a lot of those are humans. a lot of them are bots that are just going and strafing these things and collecting up and doing different. It's being used for building knowledge maps, kind of like what we heard from Meta, where they're doing fact extractions. There's been more concerted use on the television archive. So we archive television, and in the United States, it produces closed captions. And those have been used to go and find during the primaries time and also all the way through the election that Trump was mentioned more time than all of the other candidates combined. We could also start, researchers found that there really was quantifiable evidence of bubbles between Fox News, MSNBC, and CNN. We could use it for data mining to find all of the ads. We'd find one ad and using audio fingerprinting, find all the others, then find out who paid for those. So you could start to do aggregate collection analysis, not for library use, but for informing the citizenry of what's going on out there. Because we're really being run over by these digital technologies. Let's get a hold of what's going on and try to provide some level of analysis. One last example that just came out last week, which was really exciting. The television archive guys at the Internet Archive basically took the bottom third of the images from television news, where they put up the big banner of sort of what they're called chyrons. It's sort of what they think is important about what they're saying now. And they OCR'd those and made that into a database. And Vox News went and used that to document that the hurricane season, Houston was mentioned a lot, Florida a lot, Puerto Rico, not so much. Right, you could basically document this. And last week, New York Times went and used this to analyze the difference on the Manafort arrest or indictment when he went into that, how it was played on Fox News versus MSNBC versus CNN in terms of what was covered and how it was covered. And it is what you'd imagine. But it's really helpful to have it be very well understood so that we can start to make some, hopefully, tools that go at a meta level to help people understand what's going on across bubbles. Because if you think you're getting fair and balanced any place, you're not getting the other points of view.
Next question.
Hi, my name's Eleanor Cook, and I work at East Carolina University in Greenville, North Carolina. And my question has to do with library holdings across the U.S. and the rest of the world. MIT Press and other university presses and other major publishers have multiple copies of a lot of books and copyright in many libraries. And so I would like to know if you've talked to OCLC, which is, a cataloging cooperative that's been around for many years. It would be possible, I would think, that you could use OCLC holdings data to figure out the books that are held the least, and then perhaps go for those first, not the ones that we have 300 copies of. Yeah. I mean, you could just take that data and analyze that if they would be willing to work with you. Have you ever talked to them?
I haven't. I'm looking at Melissa. You have had other discussions with them, right from STEM.
I wonder if we could leap in here.
Yeah, Internet Archive. Yes, we've got a signed agreement with them. They're basically, and it's a new signed agreement to go and basically assign OCLC record numbers to all of the books, even pre-ISBN, and that will help and basically bring the Internet Archive's holdings into there so we can do overlap studies much more easily. It's already informed. We're digitizing about 300,000 books at the Library of Congress that aren't held by very many libraries, so that's happening. Library Link is another by Zephyria. They have an open system for going and making it so you can download the holdings data from 1,200 library systems now. It's great. So it's very easy for us to work with them as well. So OCLC, we've got the agreement. Zephyria, we've got the technology. So it's working already. So if you guys are on Zephyria, we have done overlap studies and we've produced, should I show the Delaware County Library?
Sure.
So based on the holdings at the Delaware County library. Let's see if I remember the URL. Otherwise, I'll have to search for it. Shoot.
For those of you who don't know it, Zafira is a linked data company that works with many, many library systems and creates linked data out of your catalog records. And we were able to go in there and very easily look at the catalog holdings of many different libraries who are working with us. And it allows us to do a kind of instant overlap study. We did this with Delaware County's library in Ohio, and in their collection, we found that even now we have quite a bit of overlap.
So we got their ISBNs and matched them against the ones that we've already digitized. So these, we want to expand it, but we've already digitized, and it's there was 47,000 matches. And right now, and we made this collection that was kind of for them, and available to borrow 38,000, and there are 8,000 that are already checked out. So it was a way of basically doing overlap studies and trying to provide use even where we stand today, which is there's still only one copy being circulated, but at least this can be useful for the 38,000 that aren't checked out to their patrons already. So yes, if you make your catalogs available to us, we would love to play with them.
We have another question.
Hi, Susan Stearns, Boston Library Consortium. One of the major projects that we're engaged in right now is a shared print initiative. And as a result of that and collection analysis, libraries, because of space crunches, are having to withdraw print titles that they purchased. Does that still count as having owned a title if you purchased it from MIT Press 30 years ago but had to withdraw it for space-saving reasons?
From my perspective, that's not a yes or no answer, because the way in which, when we think about how we want to provide our ebooks to libraries, it's pretty much abiding by the Charlotte principles, right? We're talking about no DRM, perpetual access, multiple simultaneous users, and so it's not exactly a one-to-one with with purchasing a print book. I mean, as you can tell, I'm very much in favor of this overall approach, but we have to be careful because we are running a business, and so I can't just say absolutely every MIT Press book out there should be format switched and lent. We have to think through the implications of that. So.
Well, I hear that we are coming to an end, and I want to ask you both kind of a meta question. When you're done, possibly in the next 6 months, 1,500 MIT books will be up here. Help us understand the broader impacts, the impacts for the ecosystem. What do you hope will happen from this experiment?
Well, one of the reasons that I wanted to partner with Brewster on this was to set an example for other university presses. I've been watching different presses take different approaches to digitizing backlist files. We all partner with a lot of third parties. There's a lot of variability, among those arrangements. But, to get beyond the kind of knee-jerk reaction of, this is our intellectual property and we're going to monetize it, right? That part of our mission is where we can make content accessible, we should. And so I'm hoping that there are reverberations from this partnership throughout at least the university press community, but beyond.
So maximizing access in a sustainable model for publishers.
Yeah.
Brewster?
This should be the librarian's day. The internet is fabulously well attuned for those of us that are paid to give things away. And we spend our money on publishers' products and our own staff and our own buildings, which is fabulous. But I don't think we've been living up to our opportunity. So after this goes through, basically want to see lots of libraries become digital libraries, want to see publishers see new and different ways of distributing their works. I want every user of Wikipedia to get beyond it. I think with Wikipedia, we've built a great front door. Now it's time to build the rest of the house. And the rest of the house is in our libraries. And if we can basically make this move for books, then let's do journal literature. Let's get the rest of it online as well. This has been really focused on books, but really we have to hit this one and keep going. We've basically gotten everyone to turn to their screens to answer questions, which is fabulous, except we didn't come through for them. They don't have the best we have to offer on the other side of their screen. We can fix that. Working with MIT Press is a pleasure. Working with others and libraries and authors, I think we've got something here. I think we've got a way through this. And I want to just say thank you very much to Amy for working with the Internet Archive on this. It's been just great. Thank you.
Thank you.